Welcome to my Wi-Fi's DMC. I'm DMV and you're watching Husbando Homebrew, a show where we take pop culture to pen and paper. Today, I'll be pitting two of Bleach's most popular captains, Kuchiki Byakuya and Zaraki Kenpachi, and see them battle it out in an 18th level duel to the death using D&D 5e rule set. Both characters will use the Soul Native species and take the Reaper class, with Byakuya using the Spirit subclass and Zaraki using the new Nameless Blade subclass. Type down in the comments who you think will win and see if your bet comes out on top. Will Byakuya's cold and calculating tactics win the day, or will Zaraki overwhelm his fellow captain with his monstrous ferocity? Let's find out. Byakuya walks down the steps of a nearby gate. The open grounds within the part of the Seirete is disturbed by this overwhelming spiritual pressure. He opens his eyes upon the numerous rows of towering structures to stare down at the source of this presence. Paired with this unbelievable force is a ringing of bells that herald the approach of the 11th Division's captain, Zaraki Kenpachi. His sharp grin stretching across his equally sharp features, his excitement laid bare as his equally elated Reiatsu threatens to level this entire field. Both fighters draw their weapons. Fight! Byakuya immediately considers his options. Would his Bankai end this fight early? It sounds too risky, as he's not sure whether he can handle a completely unhinged Zaraki at full stamina. Byakuya's strategy is set. Wear him down and drag the fight on before he can fully unleash his power. He places his hands forward and begins a full incantation of a debilitating Kido spell to slow his approach. Considering the distance between them, he should be able to fire off the spell before his fellow captain can get too close. Zaraki sees his opponent begin casting. His smile fades to a scowl, disappointed that someone as fast and deadly as Byakuya wouldn't give him what he wants. If he doesn't want an up-close fight, then he'll take the fight to him. Zaraki's large stature and slackened fighting stance belie his frightening speed, getting right in Byakuya's face in the blink of an eye. Byakuya's concentration wavers for a moment as Zaraki's intense spiritual pressure forces a claustrophobic sensation. In spite of Zaraki's stifling presence, Byakuya nonetheless finishes the incantation and releases a binding Kido upon the unsuspecting captain. Zaraki rolls a wisdom save, but Byakuya's full incantation makes it that much more difficult to resist. 14 and natural 1. Spectral binds form around Zaraki, preventing him from using his full speed or power. Byakuya knows his spell won't hold him down for very long, and takes the small window of opportunity to release his Soul Slayer. Scatter. Senbon Zakura. Byakuya coldly calls upon his Soul Slayer as the blade disperses into a beautiful display of deadly petals. With Zaraki in binds, Byakuya creates some distance between them and ensures his opponent is deep in his Soul Slayer's sea of blades. With some focused hand motions, he controls the petals to concentrate upon Zaraki's bound state. He makes 2 attacks. Zaraki saw one coming, but his bound state prevented him from reacting fast enough. Another mass of blades rake against him, and while it seems to cause some damage, neither attacks have actually drawn any blood. The 11th Division's captain is nothing if not ferocious, as he drags himself forward in spite of his binds, moving through the mass of sharp glints and inching his way closer towards Byakuya. In frustration, he amplifies his spiritual pressure to end this slowing effect. 20. He lets out a roar, breaking through the Kido's effects. Zaraki is closing in on Byakuya as he prepares for an up-close skirmish. With a silent incantation, he creates a chilling shield around him and moves further away from the other captain. He doesn't let up the pressure, and stays true to his strategy of wearing down Zaraki Kenpachi. While Zaraki was expecting Byakuya's attacks, his attempts at dodging within the petals made such efforts useless, as he takes 25 slashing damage, with Byakuya finally drawing first blood. Most Shinigami would cower at such an unending assault from all directions, but instead excites the man, increasing his spiritual pressure at the mere thought of having a good fight. The whirling blades do not let up, as Zaraki cuts a bloody path through Senbon Zakura, using his spiritual pressure to bolster his movement, and finally gets within melee distance of Byakuya. Zaraki is not one to consider his opponent's abilities, but for Byakuya, he makes an exception. Knowing that the 6th Division captain is incredibly fast, he tries to grapple him to keep him down. 14 against Byakuya's 24. Zaraki catches air, but doesn't linger on this attempt, and instead quickly brings his jagged blade towards Byakuya. 16 and 26. Byakuya steps away from a horizontal swipe, but was caught off guard by Zaraki's overhead slam that came too fast for him to dodge. 13 slashing. While it wasn't a direct hit, Zaraki knew it was enough to break through Byakuya's defenses. What he did not expect was the sudden chill that nearly flash froze his entire body for 14 cold damage. Zaraki felt good with that exchange. This is the kind of fight he lives for. His body is further suffused by his spiritual pressure and gains 26 temporary hit points. Byakuya is not within an optimal range. Unbeknownst to Zaraki, Senbon Zakura's Shikai state creates a dead zone within Byakuya's immediate proximity, where the petals cannot attack anything. This puts Byakuya on the back foot, and all it took was for Zaraki to get close. Thinking quickly, he casts a silent incantation that bolsters his speed even further, causing mirror images of him to appear. Relying on his speed, he risks an opportunity attack from Zaraki and moves out of range. 15 for the mirror image, Zaraki hits it with a 27. One of the after images vanished from a quick sword slash from the opposing captain, but Byakuya's calculated risk bore fruit as he managed to safely get within optimal distance for him to continuously deal damage. 19 hit and 18, but Byakuya uses his spiritual pressure to bolster that attack up to a 28. From Byakuya's perspective, all he sees is the silhouette of a man whose body is constantly being sliced by swarms of tiny blades. He deals 14 and 9 slashing damage. While Byakuya has stopped his active attacks, just being within the petals cuts up Zaraki's body. While the Reaper of the Nameless Blade is not known for tactics, he is nonetheless a combat savant. He knows that Byakuya has been avoiding direct confrontation, and that he will constantly try to kite around him. I guess I've left you parched for too long. Drink. Nozarashi! A sudden burst of spiritual energy explodes from Zaraki as his once jagged and weathered sword has transformed into a massive and embellished cleaver. Zaraki moves through the petals, hoisting his massive sword on his shoulder as if it were weightless. With little effort, he immediately slams down upon Byakuya. But the captain's mirror image catches the blow as Zaraki's colossal blade nearly splits the entire ground in two. Byakuya's footing becomes unstable from the erupting earth as Zaraki effortlessly attempts a wide horizontal sweep in an attempt to bisect the 6th Division captain. 22 total. Byakuya thinks quickly as he knows he doesn't have the footing to dodge the attack. He instead conjures a quick Kido spell to absorb the blow. His magical mastery is tested as the blade clangs hard and loud against his constructed barrier twice. And luckily for Byakuya, his shield spell holds against Zaraki's named Soul Slayer. His barrier immediately crumbles against such a ferocious assault, but it bought Byakuya just enough time to compose himself. Byakuya's plan is working, but he knows he is 1 or 2 missteps away from defeat, and that he'll be worn down himself if he's not careful. He uses a dangerous and very taxing 2-fold incantation to conjure a pair of spells directly at Zaraki. The first was a distraction, a telegraphed Hado spell as a smokescreen. Zaraki sees the flash of lightning coming his way and foolishly chooses to ignore it. The electric blast rips right through him, and while it empowered his spiritual power, he was ultimately unprepared for the real Kido spell that Byakuya had cast, Phantasmal Killer. Zaraki rolls a wisdom save, a total of 18. While he was expecting another bombastic spell, what he saw was something that instead gave him pause. Byakuya could only imagine what kind of horrors could make a man like Zaraki hesitate, but he could never expect what his opponent actually sees. A childlike Shinigami with pink hair standing right in front of him, smiling. Byakuya maintains his distance while Zaraki continues to stare at the apparition. Zaraki's attention turns back into the sea of blades that surround his form, and in this state of pain and confusion, he elects to use his spiritual energy to recover some of his wounds. Zaraki focuses once more as he stares down upon the smiling child that haunts his conscience. Byakuya attempts to use his spirit pressure to enhance the spell, reducing Zaraki's saving throw by 2. The captain of the 11th Division only needed to look upon the grand form of his Soul Slayer to realize that the phantasm before him is but a mere illusion, as he passed the saving throw with a total of 23. Byakuya sees that Kido is not very effective against someone like Zaraki and decides to wear him down through physical means instead. He concentrates the bladed petals upon the opposing captain and deals significant damage. Zaraki continues to absorb as many hits Byakuya throws his way, and while he shrugs it off all the same, the damage is beginning to show. He decides to take this captain much more seriously now, and proceeds to smash his massive cleaver upon him thrice. Byakuya had to conjure another shield made of Kido to survive the assault. Zaraki senses that Byakuya is definitely trying to wear him down, and decides to fully suffuse his body with intense spiritual pressure from his unyielding spirit. Byakuya notes that Zaraki is beginning to catch on to his tactics and decides to end this fight. He drops his sword upon the ground as he speaks the command, Bankai. Swords begin to rise up from the earth flanking the captain, before it erupts in a burst of countless blades that immediately surround Zaraki. Senbon Zakura, Kageyoshi. With Zaraki engulfed in a sphere of slashing petals, Byakuya takes no chances and makes sure to trap him within another slow spell. Zaraki attempts to resist the binding Kido, and yet, even with his resilient spirit, he finds himself shackled once more. Confident that Zaraki will not be able to retaliate within the sphere, he moves and gives himself some breathing room. In spite of Zaraki's slowed state, he musters as much power as he can to wade through Byakuya's Bankai. Any normal hollow or Shinigami would not have survived walking through this devouring maw of blades. And yet the bound Zaraki bursts forth from the sphere with nary a scratch upon him. Seeing Byakuya from a distance, Zaraki concentrates his spiritual pressure once more and breaks the magical chains that slowed him down. Byakuya is both shocked and impressed that someone would willingly go through all those sharp edges, much less come out unscathed. Not through speed, not through Kido, but through sheer physical tenacity. He changes tactics and calls the petals back to him, creating a protective bladescape around him, and summons additional blades to attack Zaraki. The damage should have been significant, yet the captain once again remains unharmed. Zaraki's spiritual pressure finally gives way, as the immense number of blades break through and once again draw blood. In the midst of these whirling massive petals, he takes a breath and hears a voice. A familiar voice, both obnoxious yet caring at the same time. The voice tells him to use it, the power called Bankai. Zaraki bursts forth, an explosion of spiritual energy that knocks Byakuya down on his back. As the dust settles, the Nozarashi has shrunk to a form as feral as its wielder. Zaraki Kenpachi is no longer holding anything back. Byakuya stands up and collects himself. This is a level of power he's never seen from his colleague. Even while obscured in the massive petals, he can still feel the intense spiritual pressure radiating from Zaraki. This is no time to be scared, and neither is this a time to be impressed. Byakuya steels himself and relies on his speed, swordsmanship, and wits to win the day. Unfortunately for him, the DM has forgotten that he has Fire Shield on, so it stops being helpful from here on out. In spite of his unknowing handicap, he puts on the pressure and attacks Zaraki twice, the blades digging deep into his skin, turning its red hue into an even deeper crimson coloration. Byakuya sees that Zaraki is heavily wounded, yet the man continues to move through the petals. He buys himself some time and distances himself from the feral captain to reassess the situation. Zaraki's feral state only increases his spiritual pressure and immediately rushes towards Byakuya. He ignores the petals from his opponent's bladescape, with his renewed spiritual pressure seemingly resisting the damage even further. Zaraki finally managed to swing his weapon upon Byakuya, but the student of Yoruichi managed to react quickly and escape the melee. Byakuya is relieved that he can still rely on his speed, but he knows that his spiritual power will run dry eventually. He attempts to cast one of his most powerful binding spells in an attempt to slow down his quarry. Zaraki's ferocity breaks through Byakuya's Hold Monster spell, but Byakuya refuses to cede this competition and summons even more chains to rain down on the monster's captain. To no avail. Byakuya's most powerful binding spell has been completely broken by Zaraki. Seeing no further recourse, Byakuya moves as far away from Zaraki as possible, relying on the heavily obscuring petals to cover his escape. Try as he might, however, he still finds himself face to face with the feral captain, who continues to shrug off his wounds from the petals. Byakuya doesn't let up and sinks in a few more hits, and slowly whittling down Zaraki's stamina. Unfortunately for Byakuya, Zaraki is once again within melee distance. Byakuya manages to escape another swipe thanks to his alacrity training, but Zaraki catches up and tries another attack. Unbeknownst to the monstrous captain, he is about to attack an after-image created by Byakuya's impressive speed. 18 and natural 1. A petal lands squarely in Zaraki's eye, momentarily blinding him. Zaraki tries to land one more attack, but at that point, Byakuya had already left his field of vision. Byakuya gains a bit of confidence and continues to apply pressure upon Zaraki, who at this point is an exposed mass of blood, muscle, and rage. The blades cut deep, but his ferocity runs even deeper as he retaliates with little regard for his own safety. With a quick swipe, he breaks the final afterimage. He makes another quick attack, but Byakuya immediately uses his flash step to avoid the attack. Zaraki doesn't let up, and finally lands an overhead strike upon Byakuya. Zaraki's spiritual pressure continues to rise, while Byakuya has to cycle his spiritual power to continue defending against this opponent. He knows he's close to winning, but he also knows that Zaraki can turn this around with a few good hits. Byakuya chooses to stand his ground, confident that he's worn Zaraki down long enough. His strategy was successful in wearing him down. Now it's just a matter of following through. Byakuya continues to pile on so many of his petals on Zaraki that there's barely any flesh left remaining on his already crimson form. Zaraki, however, still won't let up as his exposed bones move according to his incredible will. While Byakuya managed to escape one strike, he was unable to defend against Zaraki's ferocious follow-up attacks that significantly cuts through Byakuya's defenses. Byakuya is getting desperate as a worrying splash of red begins to spread upon his white haori. He steps forward. He's breathing so ragged that he could barely see through the haze of exhaustion. Byakuya raises his sword, collecting enough petals to form a physical blade from its once empty hilt to deliver one final strike. Wait, what? But this is supposed to be the Zaraki episode. Well, I think I see where the problem is. Byakuya's Bankai is just way too strong, especially the Bladescape formation. That just means the next version will just have a few more balancing patches. But you know, I think it kind of tracks. Zaraki's barely had much time to train with his Bankai, while Byakuya has mastered his over the course of decades. You be the judge though. Did I get the features right? Should I have done things differently? Give me an earful in the comments and remember to share this with your small imaginary friend. I worked really hard on this video, so I do hope you leave a like on your way out. And if this is the kind of content you're into, it'd mean a lot to me if you subscribed. Before you go, make sure to reward today's victor by checking out the Byakuya video right here. Until then, my wife and I hope you have a great day ahead.